The conversation continues. What is the chicken? Which is the chicken? Which is the egg? Is it our politics or is it our culture? Are our politicians a reflection of who we are as a society, or is it the other way around? Anyway, as we bring in our guest for the second hour, today's Proverb CT.
Death is the poor man's physician.
Death is a poor man's physician.
Yes.
Okay, meaning what?
It's a great healer. With death, all troubles cease to exist. They are zero rated completely. You are in a completely different realm.
Okay. So we continue the conversation, and just as we're going to the top of the hour, you wanted to make a point. This is...
I mean, look, that's the thing is if you have a problem, if you see that something is such an issue, you can't pussyfoot around the solution. You can't say that, okay, maybe we should try this or take a soft approach to it. If you have rot in the foundation of a building, you have to tear the building down. You have to have radical solutions to a problem that is so serious. And I think that's the problem, that we've been thinking that we can have a soft approach to systemic issues. You think you can have a soft approach to things like corruption. You think you can have a soft approach to things like, impunity. You can have a soft approach to people just not doing their job for which they're being paid, for which they've been voted in by people. And that's the unfortunate thing, that we can just, on one side I can say, okay, well, I can see there's a problem, but the Mweshime walks into the room and then we all bow down. I mean, and when you have an opportunity we talk about these issues, we say, okay, well, maybe it'll get better tomorrow. No. You have a major problem. The only way to deal with it is to have a radical approach to it.
But then when you say radical, what is radical? How would you define radical?
I mean,
others would think radical is pour onto the streets, revolutionary, take up arms.
In some cases, yes.
What is your radical? For example, for what fixing what we are currently discussing. When City says the situation is dire, then what is this radical solution? What form should it take?
Well, I think there are many. I don't think you can only have one that comes into play. Yes, in some cases, there are certain things that you can absolutely refuse to do. I mean, is it coming from individuals? Can you say that you will not vote in somebody just based on the fact that they're aligning to your personal wants or needs? But are we looking at the country as a whole and saying that the solution that we need to bring about is something that is going to affect us? When you take your child to school and they say that your child is not accepted and you need to bring in an extra shilling and maybe I'll accept your child, say no to that. When somebody wants to come and give you a handout and say that, all right, maybe this is the way you should take because there are a few extra shillings in your account. Say no to that. You're on the road and you've made a mistake, and rather than saying, okay, I'm going to pay off the cop instead of going to the police station to sit it out for hours, say no to that. And I think those are the things that are going to now bubble together and make something change. And if you see that these winds of change are actually blowing in a certain direction, and then you see that what's left is to say that now this wind needs to move right into the leadership. Then when you're casting your vote with integrity and saying that the decisions that you make as an individual, can you, without even looking at it, can you as an individual make a decision that is right?
But how do you get people, a substantial number of people, to make that decision? Because number one, you're saying that stop pointing fingers at somebody else, right? The problem and the solution lie with you. If you stop doing this, then the problem goes away. And the problem remains there because you are still doing this. So you're telling people to change what they're doing. If you say, oh, I'm the one who's going to stop offering a bribe, I'm the one who's going to stop giving empty promises to someone. I tell them I'm going to call you at 2:00 and I full well know I'm not going to call you. I'm going to be making sure that I attend meetings on time. I'm supposed to be in a meeting at 8:00 and I said 8. I did not mean morning hours. I just meant 8 on the dot. You want to tell me that we can actually get a critical mass of people to change that? Is it possible?
The thing is, the change does come about, but not as prescribed. You see, already what we're actually discussing here is how the change that Kenyans make in order to deal with the problems that they have, what we're referring to as systemic problems. The change is, you see, you can confront it in the traditional revolutionary way by picketing, by protesting, or, as Kenyans do, you look for an alternative. That is change. So is it that Kenyans have a flexible mind? They most certainly do. And they're always looking for alternatives. And when an alternative to actually cast a vote comes in, they do. And you see the changes that they want. Now, the reason why the matter goes back to the leader is because you are elected on the supposition that maybe this one time we might actually see change. All right? And then yet again, the leader follows laid down procedures that seem to infect people once they are elected. And then they proceed on a path that guarantees that the very thing that was expected is not achieved. So the flexibility of the Kenyan mind is yet challenged again to flex again and to determine how do I then exist with this situation that seems to never end. And that is the discussion we keep having. Now, the problem is, if people are pushed to the point where that flexibility gets to tiresome, then the alternative that Ndu is talking about come into, for they realize, wait a moment, this isn't helping. And the only way this thing is going to be overhauled is if we take this position collectively. Now, that is a position that anyone in leadership does not want to push people to, because the people in leadership are the ones who will be overhauled.
Right. Because look at nations whereby if you even mention something like bribery, not in government, amongst the people, it's something that is so it wouldn't even it wouldn't even come up in conversation. How do you think those people got there? How do you think they got to the point whereby you can't even, you go into a government office, for example, to get something done, and the suggestion is that you should pay an extra amount to have this done, right? It doesn't even come up in conversation. Why?
It's not tolerated at all.
At all. Before you even get to get up there amongst people, it's not. You will stand in line, you will wait in line, you'll wait your turn, you'll get things done. It is a way of life. How did they get there? The human beings living, breathing, blood pumping just like us. Why?
Desperate times.
You think they were forced into behaving
Probably.
in the right way?
Usually it's a difficult path that was followed.
Exactly.
Get to the end of the tether.
Yes, it was.
So in many cases, like I've said before and I keep saying, I don't think in some societies we're at the end of the tether. And not at the end
Not
of the
angry
tether.
enough.
Not angry enough.
So we need
It's
something
okay.
more radical to actually make us
Things
get
are
to that
still
point.
okay. Flexibility, there's still an option. When you get to the point where there's no option, where you're at the wall and behind you is also wall, to your left is wall, to your right is wall, that's when you'll see.
Let's bring in our guests for this hour, and we have two gentlemen. One of them is Dr. Ezekiel Mutua. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Film Classification Board, and many people call him the Moral Police. And the other one is Njiru. Njiru founded a movement a couple of years ago, and he still continues with it. It's called the Ungwana Initiative. For a while, he was going around the country and in the media, and he was telling people, stop your ushenzi and being muungwana. And he was saying many of the things that we do, and that very, very much goes in line with what Ndu you were saying earlier. We've got to change ourselves. You've got to make sure that you make that decision yourself to change, to stop being mshenzi and start doing ungwana things. And this is doing the things that are right. Gentlemen, good morning and thank you very much for joining us, Ken and Ezekiel.
Asante.
We have an issue with your line, Ken, I think. Dr. Mutua, good morning.
Good morning, Latif.
Good to have you in the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a
Jambo
bit better.
Daktari. Jambo, Ken, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Excellent.
Asante.
Right. We're going to start with you, Dr. Mutua. And the issue we're discussing now is about where we are as a society. We seeing the kind of conversations and communication that's happening, especially with those leaders who are either elected or in political positions of leadership. We had Aisha Jumo over the weekend. We had Edwin Sifuna. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, we saw nominated Senator Melissa Nomanga on social media with Boniface Mwangi, who's also a political leader by his own right, and the kind of vitriol they were pouring on each other on social media. And we ask ourselves, why are we seeing all these our leaders behaving this way in public? Is it a reflection of who we have become as a society, Dr. Mutua?
Eric, our biggest challenge as a country today is our moral problem, the breakdown of our moral fabric. And it is not just within the top leaders. Yes, top leaders are expected to behave better. There's a bigger responsibility. But it cuts across to the lowest, from the least to the highest office, we've lost it at the moral level. And that's where the problem is, because a nation cannot progress without moral values. The thing that we need to build very urgently is our moral fabric, to have a sense of decency, a sense of right and wrong, a sense of self-retrospection, to say that that we have a foundation of values, of integrity, and self-respect, because some of those things that you are hearing, it is from people who lack self-respect. What can Njiru cause ushenzi, for lack of a better word. We've done very well as a country, really, in terms of building the physical infrastructure, the hardware of our country. But we have forgotten the software issues of morality, of decency, of discipline, of integrity. And in the process, we may think we are building, but actually every the 2 steps we take forward, there are 3 steps backward, almost in every aspect. And I think, to put it very clearly, Eric, there's a lack of leadership, a dearth of leadership at so many levels in our society. You can't blame one section. Of course, our politicians, there's so much lack of political hygiene in our politics and in our process. But I think we can't just blame the political leaders. This is a societal problem. But I think, again, from where I sit, the media has fueled this kind of scenario where we glorify and canonize bad behavior, people with loud mouths, people bang tables, people all insult, and they are the ones who are painted and given airtime. And now I wish we can withdraw the cameras from these kind of people and deny them airtime, deny them oxygen, because people make these kind of statements and utterances because they know they will be covered. They know it will make political mileage and capital.
Dr. Mutua, do you think that if they were not being covered, they would not say these things? If they were not being given airtime, that they would go back to those manners that their mother and father taught them? Do you think that they wouldn't say these things if they were not in the full glare of cameras?
I firmly believe so too. I'm a journalist, and I do know the power of the media in shaping opinions and values and building character. The moment politicians realize that they cannot be covered if they're talking development, and if they're talking academia, if they're talking sense, and that it's the who insults the loudest and the worst, it is the person with a loud mouth, it's the person with the most immoral and obscene kind of talk that gets airtime. That is what we promote, and therefore the power of the media to set the agenda, the right agenda for society, becomes very critical. Yes, we will never solve that by denying them the cameras. Bad people will always be bad people. But there is an agenda-setting role of the media, where you can say, if you are hurling insult and if you are being obscene, we are not going to give you airtime in our station. And you just warn them, even when they come to your studio and a program like this, that matusi haitakubaliwa katika kipindi hiki. Ushenzi hautakubaliwa. And when they go for political rallies and they realize the moment they are dwelling on insult, that rally will never be covered, I can tell you we can bring change. It may not be the ultimate solution, but there is the power of agenda setting by the media.
Can come in now here and tell us about this Ungwana Ushenzi and why first of all you started it, and is it that you got to a point where you felt that we have basically lost it all as a society?
Well, I started Ungwana as a response to just feeling that something was fundamentally wrong in our society. And by the way, I think one of the paths that I had, of course, was to join politics, given that I had come from a political family. But I realized that there's something fundamentally wrong. Because even when you go to seek those votes, much as we are blaming leaders, the first Kenyan that you find tells you, umpatie kitu kidogo. Mm-hmm. And they are not even asking for a lot of money. They're asking for 50 shillings. And if you don't give him the 50 shillings, they will insult you. And they will end up voting for the gentleman who basically gives them money. So that it's become a vicious cycle as far as leadership is concerned, where I spend the next 5 years stealing from you, then I come and buy you with 50 shillings. But having said that, I also appreciated that values, like Dr. is saying, and the attitudes and the whole question of behavior is fundamental to the prosperity and the continued existence of any polity. I keep pointing out the fact that Rome did not collapse because of an invading army, but because of its collapse of its moral mainsprings, right? And when we speak of mainsprings here, what we are speaking about is a sense of a higher consciousness. You know, human beings, by the way we've been made, and the reason we are having this conversation is because deep down we all feel there's something wrong. And we will give solutions in our respective areas. We will point to politicians. But it's not just politicians, as Dr. Mutua says. Though they carry the biggest burden, so to speak, in the sense that they do policies. They influence society. They influence what is taught in schools. They influence what is said. By the way, Dr. Mutua, politicians can even shut down the media for pushing immoral things, so to speak, out of laws and stuff like that. But when it becomes, or rather when the sociocultural mode becomes vulgarity, what I call ushenzi, then something is very wrong. Think about what happened the other day. It was in the papers along the Sagana Makutano route, where people were stuck on the road because on both sides of the road, people had created 5 lanes. Mm-hmm. 5 lanes that are coming to Nairobi, 5 lanes going out of Nairobi, because possibly there was an accident. And I have been stuck there once for 2 hours. And when I look left and right, it is battered cars, battered pickups. It is big Mercedeses. It is, it does not matter. It's not even just a question of the Matatu guy. The Matatu guy is doing his thing. But there's a guy driving a huge car, and you would expect that he has some sense to know that if I block and do 3-4 lanes, then we are all stuck here. This is the Kenya we are building. Look at the border guy. Routinely, they ride their bikes on the wrong side of the road. And that has become allowed. All right? Now, think about that border guy when he grabs the car. What do you think he'll do? You think he'll change and start driving, properly? Think about the millions of young girls in Mount Elgon, in one whole school. You find 20, 30 girls have been impregnated, which means that it's a pandemic. But we will never hear of those stories in Parliament. What we are all talking about is who will give the next seat, how the next seat will cause, stability in our country. And so for me, as I was going into Ngwana, I told myself, as one person once said, to all those thousands hacking at the leaves and spraying down on the leaves, there is one hacking at the roots. And we have to hack at the roots of this tree. Is it possible to transform this country? Yes, it is possible to transform this country. I usually tell people just to look at England 200 years ago, in the days of William Wilberforce, the time you're saying that he has discovered that God has given him 2 things to do. 1, abolish slave trade. 2, the reformation of manners. Those guys were worse off than we were. But some people just simply said, this is not what it means to be human. And so for me, it's a question of a higher consciousness, understanding what it means to be human, but even most fundamentally, it cannot be achieved in a haphazard manner. We cannot just attack the politicians, then tomorrow we attack the doctors, the next day we attack the lawyers. And by the way, when I talk about the lawyers, when I see their president like Harvey taking pot shots at the government, I always ask myself, where has he left his lawyers? These days, we are not sure. You go to a lawyer, you're not sure whether you give him your conveyancing fee, you're going to get what you want out of it. All right? Look at doctors. They'll watch you dying because you don't have 5,000 shillings. And yet they've taken the Hippocratic oath to make sure that they do what is right.
Hippocratic oath.
Hippocratic oath. Look at the teachers. Like I said, impregnating children. They are supposed to be custodians. All right? And so this whole mix all rests on the foundations which are rotten.
Mr. Njiru, everything you've mentioned so far are symptoms, really. Yes. You're talking about the moral fabric of a society. And yes, I hear you say that everyone participates in it. But in all honesty, in the time that even the last 20 years, we have seen situations where we have seen when what we consider the runaway moral rot has been halted to some degree. And I'm going back to the time of President Kibaki's government.
Yes.
when certain things that had been hitherto considered to be impossible suddenly became possible. For instance, the so-called runaway bribery, when you wanted a license, when you wanted a passport, when you wanted an ID, the matatu industry just doing exactly what they wanted, we saw changes. We even saw the rot in Nairobi River changing. We saw these things. So
Yes.
what was it? Was it the Wananchi suddenly rallied, or did they have an example from the leadership, and the leadership taking a firm position that brought about the change? Which was it, in your opinion?
For me, first of all, what those changes show is that it is possible to change. But what then they also signify is a thrust that is not well considered. It's not a total change paradigm. All right. What do I mean? I mean that, for example, if you wanted today to change Spice FM, the behaviors of people in Spice FM, you would have to start asking yourself, in a global sense, what do we want the character of Spice FM to be? And by extension, what do we want the character of the Kenyan to be? We need to place a few values and say hardworking, integrity, and stuff like that. And then ask ourselves in a programmatic manner and put resources to it, by the way, and start pushing it systematically. All right? What I was excited about, for instance, you remember when Michuki, pointed at the Matatus and said they will change. Mm-hmm. And the Matatu guys started demonstrating, saying we won't change. Right? And they even went on strike, and Michuki said, you will change. And he pushed it, and Kenyans came on board. So what is lacking is that leader who marshals the total moral conscience of a nation and stays on it. Right. Stays on it for year 1, year 2, year 3. Who says that 20% of our budget will be used to ensure that this moral message is pushed, so that we even start rewarding people who behave well, companies who behave well, and stuff like that. But today we have ruffians in power, people who are elected because of their money, and they spend the rest of their time clowning. Then they come again, and by the way, the funny thing is, they are still nominated by political parties. I'm not even sure we have political parties anymore. So that the whole question of leadership, you are talking about Omanga, you are talking about the lady from Coast, and the gentleman who they were exchanging, in the media, in a very crude manner. I always wonder when I look at our leaders across the board, what do we think? What is the Kenyan model of leadership? The minute you are elected, even by bribing, people start calling you a leader. And as Dr. Mutua is saying, you start getting all the airtime. If Njiru tries to say something, nobody will listen to you because you're not a leader. Yeah? But is that what leadership means? I am very sad that even as we're talking about transforming our country, we've not even talked about that political party that is meant to socialize what leadership means and give the nation proper leaders who are then elected. But what do we have? Transient bodies that keep changing every year. I'm not even sure we'll have Jubilee.
But Mr. Njiru, who are the people who set up these systems that we speak of? Again, we know who elects the leaders. But the truth of the matter is that you're discussing impunity, runaway impunity. And the question that I'm actually asking is, this impunity that is it tolerated by the so-called leadership? The answer is yes.
If I may keep it, the irony, Dr. Mutua, just a small one. Just a small one, Dr. Mutua. The irony of life is that it is you and me who are called to change this scenario. I recall, the time God was telling Moses, go, and Moses was asking, why me? Right? So that even as I'm pontificating here, I have a duty to step up and do something about it. As Mutua is stepping up, if we have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people stepping up and coming into this space, I can assure you it will start to change. But what do we have? We have a situation where we discuss these things. We'll discuss them on radio. When this program shuts down, we go into music. We will discuss them in clubs. We'll discuss it at home. So we need a proper movement. We need to craft it. And just like the politicians are pushing BBI or whatever they push, even as we must push it. Because if we don't push it, it won't work. And I hope that the ones who feel this will be part of this movement, so that it's not against politicians, but it's a movement that is basically crafted by people who believe that we are more than we are casting ourselves out to be. Daktari. Thank you very much, Ken. And I agree with everything that Ken is saying. And I served in the Kibaki administration. I joined the government in 2007. And I remember that government, the kind of people who were in leadership, from the political class to the ministers, to the people who ran the instruments of power, who had the instruments of power. And there's something that is fundamentally different in the sense that Kibaki administration had a reservoir of wisdom born of age and elderly experience in the names of the Moody Awaris of this world, the John Michukis. There were elders, there was wisdom that was born from independence and getting a clear direction of where the country is going, that I think came to bear during the Kibaki administration, that we are lacking now in the name of inclusivity and bringing in youth and women. And there are things that we are doing right now to look fashionable, to look democratic, that are actually the very foundation of our challenge. Because there is something you can't replace with youthful energy. Youth are good, but they need to be guided. We need to include youth and women in our systems of governance. But I think we cannot sacrifice morality and decency just to look fashionable and to look like we have brought in everybody on board, so that we are opening up the political space for all manner of charlatans to get in, and we have no system of vetting. We are liberalizing the media. We are opening up the digital space, and there is no infrastructural regulatory framework that is guiding that, and we are doing catch-up. We always, liberalize, open up the space, include women, include the youth, and then we start now putting the caveats and the regulatory framework and doing catch-up. I think that's a challenge, and the difference between now and then. Let me say this. If you look at the Asian tigers and the countries that have progressed, there is no country that ever meant or created real development without first laying a moral foundation. The values of integrity, hard work, honesty, they are the basis upon which we must build our nation and retrieve what we have lost. In my view, if you look at the Singaporean model, for example, the founding fathers of that country, Lee Kuan Yew, set up very strict moral foundation of integrity, and there must be rewards and punishment. That if you do well, you are appreciated, acknowledged, and rewarded in society. But if you are deviant, you are breaking the law and breaking morality and the moral fiber, and impregnating, like Ken is saying, schoolgirls and doing all manner of things, you can't buy that with money and buy your freedom. Lee Kuan Yew was unforgiving, uncompromising. That is one nation where a minister getting even a ticket, being bought a ticket by a corporate that is within their oversight, would be punished and sacked. And they build a foundation of moral values based on integrity, pragmatism, and morality, to the point where people knew, if you do this, this is the punishment.
There's a
if you do
consequence
this,
for
this
it.
is the reward. And I think that's what we are lacking. So we must get back to the basics.
Let's take
so
a
that
break.
It's not just an issue of politicians. We have lost it at so many levels, and we need to go back to the basics and say, decency pays. We cannot afford to bring socialites and charlatans to our politics, to leadership, and to reward mediocrity and punish excellence. I see a situation where it's very painful to see people like Ken have no place in society. I'm not saying he's not important, but what he's saying is not seen as critical, but as socialite will be given airtime. And you guys give airtime to people who really should not get airtime.
Let's take a break at this point.
And at the expense of intelligence and
everything else. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. We're having a conversation with Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, CEO of the Kenya Film Classification Board, and Ken Njiru. Ken Njiru is the founder and a leader of a movement called the Ungwana Initiative. And so this one is where we're looking at our moral fabric as a society, where we are. Have we lost it? Have we lost it? Is it our culture that then is influencing the kind of politics that we have and the kind of behavior that we have from our leadership? So, CT, we've been talking about, the role of leader versus the role of the citizen, and this is the elector. So, who comes first? Is it the person who is choosing the leader, making the right choice in the type of person they've elected as leader? Or is it the leader, no matter how they got into office, then making a decision that I've got to lead?
It boils down to simply this. Who asked this one question that can be responded by another question: where do you take the cue from? Dr. Mutua gave the example of Singapore. We always give the example of Singapore. We talk about Lee. We talk about him as though he was alone. He wasn't. He had people who supported him. He had a support structure, people who thought like him, people with whom they agreed on what they would do. Remember, many of the discussions they were having in Malaysia, not even in Singapore. So when they came to Singapore, when they implemented these things, President Kibaki had a support system. I remember he was accused of bringing back or regurgitating
the old bazaars.
Exactly. But that was his support system. And he himself was also considered to be very unforgiving. He was very strict. Even if it was understood you were his buddy and something went wrong, he let the course of the law take its due position. But even as you talk about changes, one has to be fair to the current presidency. Because President Kibaki didn't have to function with the full implications of the constitution as this current presidency has. President Kibaki was not in a position where you couldn't get rid of your deputy as you saw fit. There are many things that this particular presidency has to deal with. But that aside, the cue, I am saying, is taken from the leadership. When the leadership is firm and holds that position, everything follows. If the leadership isn't, irrespective of the circumstances in which they have their leadership, then everything follows.
Okay, so we are at a point where our leaders, now these are our political leaders, leave alone the president, okay? The other leadership at this point, nominated senator, somebody who has vied for a parliamentary seat in office, they go at each other on social media and you wonder, all right, so what do they represent? Is this then saying that if you had elected Boniface Mwangi to a position of leadership, then he should have performed in a certain way? Or is it about we, the people, deciding, look at the character of this person? Look at how Millicent Omanga is behaving on a slight provocation.
Eric.
Or Boniface Mwangi. Or...
Eric, in the history of this country, have you ever seen a deputy president, we don't have them, they want a deputy or vice president, taking on the president as we have seen in this particular time? And have we seen?
You see, I think there's a there's a point that you're making, but I think the point is sort of veering away from governance and behavior, because we are talking about how you conduct yourself as a person, character.
Actually, Eric, no. Taking the cue. If the presidency is at odds for the whole country to see, and it's visible, sides are taken within the very presidency, what cue is it that we are actually? Then you have a situation where you have what we call runaway corruption. Everything that you assume could actually go bad has gone bad. And unfortunately, it has to go back to the very top leadership. That's where the cue is taken from. And then you come down and you look at whether it's governors or senators or whatever, the cue has been taken. That's the point I'm actually trying to make.
For both of us, I mean, especially with you, for both of you now, Dr. Mutua, and then Ken as well. Ken, when you talk about this going through to individuals, so does it mean that if a leader is not behaving in a certain manner, does then that give you a free pass to also misbehave as an individual? Do we then spur them on and clap when we see? Because this is what we've seen. Let's just be honest, right? When we saw these slurs taking place one to the other, when we constantly see this side taking, the people who are urging and clapping them on are Kenyans. They're not Martians that have been imported from another planet. They're Kenyans, right here, also behaving in that manner. Can we then say that, yes, we know that leadership ought to behave in a certain way, but then you who carries out your own way of thinking on a daily basis, can you then blame a leader for the way in which you behave in your personal space? Can we do that? Or do we say we also have a responsibility to bear?
I think and that's the most painful thing, that when these leaders were insulting each other, both in the political rallies and also in social media, there were people cheering them. And that's what pains me most. Even when some of them were talking about rape, and that if we want to rape, we also know we choose what to rape. I mean,
Unachagua.
deplorable, but people cheering. And that's where it shows you the rot, the levels of moral degradation in our country. That is not just about leadership. We've lost it. We have, Ken is talking about moral consciousness. And this is that's what happens the moment we begin. And the city, and a very important point, that people are watching what is happening at the top. The moment you have people, a situation where the presidency is disrespected, people can insult the president on social media and it looks okay. That politicians can exchange verbs at the top and it looks okay. Where we can have all manner of immorality and obscenity hurled at each other and the media airs that, it even looks fashionable that if you're not sensational and obscene and insulting each other, it's like you're not cool, you know. Mm-hmm. So we are teaching our youth that to be cool, to be fashionable, is when you are obscene and you have a loud mouth and you don't respect leaders and you can hurt the most with insult, not with intelligence, not with the points, but you can bring your opponent down using what do I call, untoward means and shortcuts. And we have promoted that from the top. And people like City say, people are watching. People are not stupid. And this is the problem, that we are setting a bad example for our children from the top. Leaders are behaving badly. Parents are behaving badly. Teachers are behaving badly. Religious leaders are behaving badly. And kids are watching. The followers are watching. So it's a societal problem. I'm very happy that you called the topic culture and the politics, because it's a cultural issue now. We've got to attack this problem from all dimensions. If we are going to have a solution, we can discuss it until cows come home, and until we have a very clear line between right and wrong, where the punishment and rewards are very clear, that you do this and you can never be elected. There are things as a public official, a CEO like myself, in some countries, you do them and you resign. Or you are accused of this and you resign. One, because people have raised the bar and the threshold of morality and integrity so high that we are clear what morality is. We are clear what integrity is. But in a country where from the top to the bottom, these lines are blurred. It's like we are not clear then what is the sense of right and wrong, where we disrespect our leaders and insult them and even demean the institution of the presidency. I think there is a problem. So this is my call. I am appealing to the media because that's the area where I am in. I can't be everything. Ken is doing his bit. You guys are doing your bit. And thank you for inviting us. But I'm asking, can we take responsibility from where we are? The reason why, as the CEO of Kenya Film Classification Board, I am very vocal about the kind of content the kids are consuming is because I think if everyone of us did their bit, and we say, let us not air obscene content during the watershed period, and you uphold that because it is in the law. And as a CEO, I live what I preach. I preach water and drink water, not wine. And Ken does the same. CT, Eric, we all do our part. Let us take personal responsibility. Let us not discuss other people. Let us reflect also and say, in Spice FM, we are not going to allow insult. We are not going to invite charlatans and politicians and glorify their insult. We are going to say someone who has been summoned by the NCIC because they uttered insult as politicians in their political rallies will feature in your show. Deny them the oxygen.
So
because
now
that's
for
where
you,
the
Ken,
problem starts.
so
and let us have punishment and rewards that are very clear in our society.
So Ken, for you now, are we saying that, when we look at leaders behaving in this way and the general population also seems to be going in that direction, how are we steering back? How are we steering away from this? Because I think we've accepted the fact that there's a problem. I don't think we're still at that level. So really to say something to do about it, I hear you when you talk about the programs or things like that needs to, because what you're essentially saying is that there needs to be a reconditioning of the mind. Like that's what needs to happen in terms of behavior change. This needs to take place. How do we? How is the how?
The how. You see, culture. Like we've all agreed, actually, it's a cultural problem, and call it a social cultural problem that includes the way we even work. It's okay to steal. It includes the way we run our politics and even other areas of leadership in churches. Our families, by the way, our families are even coming together. All the wheels are coming off, so to speak. And so we then need a seasoned leader and leaders, because this thing cannot be done alone, who understands how you move culture. Culture can be changed. When we talk about Lee Kuan Yew, by the way, what he built was not an economy. What Lee Kuan Yew did was did a transformational culture change in Singapore, right? When you talk about the Chinese, and by the way, I use that example with caution because there was a lot of bloodshed. You remember the days of Mao Zedong? They talk about the cultural revolution. They changed people's minds, right? It doesn't have to be bloody. In Singapore, it wasn't bloody. That's in Singapore. There was a professor I was speaking about. When they build the high rises and they move people from villages, people would come with pigs from the village, and he wants to take it to the 30th floor, to his apartment, because he believes that his livelihood is locked in that pig. Right? People were even urinating in lifts. That's how crude the culture of mold was. And so they even had to put sensors. So the minute ammonia is smelt, it goes off na unashikwa. All right? The chewing gum thing. They even stop people from chewing gum. What am I saying? It has to be a program. And the leader in a certain point in time, and one of the things I believe, by the way, is that all leaders are in their space in a certain given time as God has ordained them. All right? So the next leader who's coming to lead us, this must be about culture change. I just want to make one point, just to deconstruct a bit of what Dr. Mutua said slightly. Kibaki did a good job. Kibaki and those old guys. In fact, I came to understand that this thinking, they even had it when they were young. In fact, this 2030 thing, Kibaki had it in his head as he was coming to become the president, which means he had a vision. But one thing that they did not do, and that was a major failing on their part, they never also worked on culture. What they did was they executed well. We saw Thika Road. We had never seen anything like that. A highway of 10 lanes. And at 16 billion, I'm sure today it would be 400 billion, because that has become the way, the way of doing things. And so I think the time to reconstruct our moral and consciousness mainsprings is now. And if we don't do it, it doesn't matter how many highways we have, whether they are on the ground or they are in the air. It doesn't matter how many trains we construct. It doesn't matter how many ships are sailing. It will all collapse.
But who takes the responsibility? Who takes leadership in this? I hear you guys saying that there's a point of leaders, but what in the absence of leadership, because we are at a position where clearly now we are questioning the kind of leadership that we have. In the absence of leadership, then what?
What I'm saying, I'm at a point in my life that I'm saying that the people to actually take this is you and me who are speaking about it. Let us push it to the logical conclusion. Let's not be, many of us are scared. We are scared of stepping up. Stepping up in our profession.
Njiru, what in your opinion is the logical conclusion?
The logical conclusion is that we must kick in all areas of our lives. We must kick in. And like I said, I like using the example of Moses where he's asking God, why me? It is you. Get out there. Do it. Njiru, get out there and do it. Yeah? Speak. Get into the space, whatever that means. We think leadership is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. It's not. And the fact that that's the way we think, they then take advantage of us so that we continue recycling the same guys.
Do they take advantage or do we allow them to take advantage of us?
First of all, they do take advantage of us because there's a level of trust, our leaders. But we also allow them to take advantage of us. It's a sweet and sour type of mixture, but it is all based on the level of consciousness, and I'm talking about consciousness of I, the leader. By the way, one of the things I want to point out is that if you think about the history of the vote globally, as late as the early 60s, do you know women did not even have the vote in the UK, right? There was a time the vote was used to belong to the landed elite and the royals. I mean, what I'm saying is that there was a consistent unleashing of the power of the vote in society. But what have we done? We've thrown it at ourselves. Everybody has a vote. Even the village idiot who drinks every day, is good for nothing, is being told to judge Mutua. But having said that, I am not saying that we take back the vote, but I'm saying that we must now work on the consciousness of our people, so that then the majority of the people are voting in the right manner, not voting for somebody ati kwa sababu mtu ni wa kabila yetu. Kikuyus, Luos, Kambas. We are creating now we want to create positions where we put tribal warlords. Something is wrong. And we know it is wrong, Eric, we know it is wrong, Sike. The question is, why are you and I holding back? That is what we call cowardice.
Why?
Moral cowardice.
This has been a question that I've asked. I think my colleagues sometimes get a little irritated because I keep saying this. Why is it that we hold back? Why is it that we say, okay, are we comfortable? Too comfortable maybe? Or too afraid? Or we lack the courage to be able to stand up and say that actually this is wrong?
Prudence.
What is the problem? Because it can't be for over such a
there?
long period of
keep it there,
time
Eric?
that we keep saying there's a problem, there's a problem.
Prudence.
But then we don't say anything about it. We don't do
I'm
anything about
repeating
it.
it. Prudence.
City has only said it 11 times now.
That's
Prudence.
prudence.
It's not prudence. It's not prudence, it's cowardice.
Cowardice. Dr. Mutua, what is it?
Makes it sounds good.
No, in my view, we've got to institutionalize the culture of decency and let people know right from the young generation, because I think you cannot start molding them when they are done.
They're asking why we are not doing it.
Why we are not doing it is because,
yes,
like I said, there is no foundational base for us to know that when you stand up for something, no matter the position you are holding in society, you are appreciated. You see, like now, some of the things that I do, let me use myself as an example, because if I can't do that, I have no business talking in this program. I was a school head boy in my primary school called Ikumene Primary School in Mwala, Machakos County, when I did my CPE. In 1983, I was a prefect in Mwala Secondary School. I was a prefect and a CU chairman in Tala High School during my A levels. In other words, there is something that was instilled in me by society through those processes from when I was young that is helping me now as the CEO of Kenya Film Classification Board. And this is the point I'm trying to make. I'm not an angel, but I'm saying a leadership that is built out of experience, values that you have been tried. You make mistakes. You know this is a mistake in leadership. You can't just start doing those things at the top. It is something that we need to institutionalize throughout our school system, throughout our religious, programs, through our corporate businesses and programs, and ensure that we have these things inculcated. That's why, like now, what we are doing at KFCB in the Kenya National Drama and Film Festival, we have signed a partnership with the Ministry of Education to say, for example, we want to identify and nurture talent from the ECD all the way to university, but we want to do it in a way that we also promote moral responsibility among the youth as we identify and nurture talent. So that talent is not for talent's sake. Art is not for art's sake. If you are singing a song, be patriotic and understand the power of art to change society, to inspire, to promote positive social values. And we are saying as we do this, I appreciate it more as a CEO. This program, I believe in it. It's not something being, pushed down my throat and my colleagues. I have also identified among KFCB, we have great managers and young people who are so passionate about the same value. So that is not just Mutua alone. Actually, most of the films that you see me banning, it's a report I'm given by young people who believe that our society cannot acknowledge and promote certain things. One, because they are unlawful and they are not in line with our culture. And I look at that example. It may not be a big thing to celebrate in the way the society celebrates things. But I'm saying from where I sit as a CEO, if I cannot get it right,
Why do I expect the minister to get it right? Why am I pushing that responsibility to the minister, to the president? Why don't I do it? I'm the CEO of KCB. And I'm trying to say, guys and colleagues, and galvanizing support from my colleagues, but also building partnerships. We are identifying now brand ambassadors who can talk about music and art and influence other people. We are building partnerships, and we are building a movement on morality and hygiene in art and music and film that is going to change the country. And what I'm saying is, guys, let's not give up on our country. What we are doing as Spice FM, what Njiru is doing with Ungwana is contributing. Let us not also lament like there's no hope. The bad guys on the internet, the politicians who are insulting, they are few. It's only that we give them too much attention. Why don't we also focus on the good things that are going on in our society?
Right.
Glorify good over evil. Talk about the good guys like what you guys are doing. As seasoned journalists, I have a lot of respect for you. But I want to ask you, do it deliberately. Don't call Njiru today and Ezekiel Mutua, then tomorrow you call another socialite. Be intentional. Be deliberate. What do you want to achieve with Spice FM? It's not just about the rating. You should be committed to changing the society by saying Spice FM is known for this. Let me tell you, as a CEO, I will advertise with Spice FM if I'm assured that that station, that program, uphold the values. I'm not saying I'll deny you advertising. You invite certain people, but there must be a commitment for me to feel this is a place where these programs are safe for my children, so that's my responsibility, and that we are committed and we share the values. A country is about shared values, shared culture, shared faith, and commitment to values that make us one people. It's not just a geographical.
Thank you, Dr. Mutua. Coming to the top of the hour, so this conversation has to come to an end, and I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, the CEO of the Kenya Film Classification Board, and Njiru, the Ungwana Initiative. So there's Ungwana and there's Ushenzi, and you want us to stop all the Ushenzi and just deal with the Ungwana.
By the way, Eric, in 2021, I commit to getting getting as many Kenyans to just step in the gap. It's about actually stepping in the gap, and it's very clear even in our good books. We must, wherever you are, just step in the gap, and this nation shall change. As a lawyer, as a teacher, as a doctor, as a farmer, as a driver, whatever it is, and this nation shall change. So if we become Wangwana, and for me, stepping in the gap is becoming a Mungwana as opposed to a Mushenzi, this nation shall change. In God's name.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and have a good day.
Thank you very much.